All right, today, just do a little quick review with some bevels, miters, chamfers, compound miters, rabbets, dados, grooves, those type of cuts we talked about. I thought I'd start talking about the sawhorse leg that we potentially would have cut if we would have still been in school. So I don't have the blueprint on me, but again, the pitch or the slope of this project was supposed to be a 312. So a little bit of review about laying out a 312 is that, again, it's always rises to run, and the run is always 12 on the square, and then you just change your rise to get different pitches. So we could, pivot at 12 here, and then so 412 and 312 using the same side of the square and from the same corner. So, if I wanted to, the whole thing is a 312, so I could lay out a 12-3 and mark the tongue of the square, not the body. And that would be the angle of my sawhorse leg. A little review again is that I could also do the exact same thing with a speed square. I could pivot at a point, and I could rotate it on the pivot point until I cross the 3 on the common cuts. Let's talk about rafter cuts, and mark it, and it's the same line. So I could get my cut that way. We don't have an angle. Lots of these squares, obviously with a speed square, if you wanted to, once you pivot that angle, you could simply read off the degrees, which it is, and it is 14 degrees. So you go from there. Either way, however you do it, once you've got it once, it is a little faster to use the sliding T-bevel as an angle transfer tool. So I'm going to just steal that, and now I've got it forever until someone fiddles with it. All right, so the sawhorse is tilted in both directions, and I don't have a sawhorse with me, but I'll just take the camera and show you a similar object. This is my bandsaw stand, and as you can see, the leg has an angle cut right here along the face, but it also has an angle cut along the along the edge, and so that it angles in both directions to get shorter at the top or closer at the top, and a compound miter cut. So that's very similar to your sawhorse leg. All right. So in saying that, it's also a 312, so I'm just going to continue that angle transfer around the edge. Here we go. Okay, now we're getting a little bit with lingo here, so let's just review a little bit. Both of these are miter cuts, okay? So this miter cut is an angle across the face. This one is an angle across the edge. Now, a miter cut is common, mainly when you frame two things. You'll cut two miters across the face. These ones at 45 degrees, to make such a thing as a picture frame. It doesn't have to be 45 degrees. It can be a 312. The other thing is you can also do a miter cut along the edge of a piece like this, as if you're making kind of like let's say a shadow box or another type of picture frame. So they're both miters. If you do them both together, like we are doing here, we have a compound miter. All right, so we're doing a compound miter cut, 312 both ways. Let's just go over a couple of the cuts that we haven't laid out for a long time. If we were, for example, to lay out a angle cut along the edge or the end grain like this, and then rip it. So remember, this is a type of cross cutting. Ripping is along the grain like this. So if we were to rip this out, rip that angle out to get something like this cut right here, then that would be called a bevel. Bevel is along the grain and miter is across the grain. The other thing is not to be confused with this type of cut, which is sort of like a bevel because it's ripped, but this is a chamfer, not a bevel. And the difference is that a chamfer doesn't go all the way to the corner when you cut it. And other thing to realize is that you could also do a chamfer across the grain. If you had an object going to chamfer all four sides, it's still called a chamfer when it's across the grain or whether it's with the grain. So chamfer is a little bit different than a bevel, which goes right through. Okay, so we are going to make this compound miter cut. And I'm going to do so in a, if we were in school, we would definitely hand cut that and try to get better at that. It's kind of useless to, you can't get better at hand cutting by watching me hand cut a whole bunch of times. So I'm just going to take you to the compound miter saw next. Just another little review is, into the next part of our project, is that let's remember what all these notches are called. So when you have a notch along the grain, that would be called a groove, sorry. And when you have a notch across the grain, that's called a dado. And the other one that's special, and we know this a lot from building our birch box, is any notch that is on the edge of a piece, whether it's along the grain or across the grain, which I don't have here, would be called a rabbet, okay? So now in our Sawhorse project, not only will we have to cut this compound miter, we actually have a really complicated combination of all of these things in the middle. And again, that's gonna be actually similar to the stand that I made here. Again, simple, but I made I guess you'd call it a dado because it's across the grain in this leg. And so a dado cross, but it's not just a straight dado, it also has to match the compound miter cut of the bottom of the leg to keep it parallel to the ground, right? And to the top. All right, so nice, simple shop project. You can see why this is something that you'd want to know how to do, because it's not for complicated carpentry, it's for everyday type of things that you want to do in your workshop or even in your house. So this one, you know, for example, let's just say that we measured up and it's going to be 12 inches from the bottom. That looks about 12 inches. So again, it's parallel. So we just stole this 312 angle, all right? And then actually conveniently, after marking this miter, the rail that you were going to fit into this dado was going to be 2 inches. And if you don't remember, the body of the square is 2 inches. So I'm simply going to keep that parallel and I'm going to mark this side. So now I've marked out a 2-inch wide dado, like so, and kind of it's a miter dado, I guess. Okay, and now it also has to go across the edge. And lots of people have messed this up in the past. You have to keep it parallel to what you did down there. So make sure you keep it parallel. You bring it across, and we'll just match it right up to what we did on the face of the board. There we go. And obviously we're not going all the way through because it's a dado. It's just a notch to accept the piece that we're putting into it. I'm just going to keep this straight here. Okay. Getting longer, so I have to flip this sliding T-bevel and line this up. I'll go a bit down. And then 3/8 deep, which would best be done. And again, 3/8 is just off the blueprint. I just kind of mentioned that in the air. But there's some depth to this dado, compound miter dado. And so the best would be to lock a combination square. I think I forgot my combination square in the last video too, so I'm going to grab that again. All right, combination square. You can slide it to 3/8. Perfect. And then you can use that to mark the depth of your dado cut. There, so we're going to plow that out. And we are going to plow that out. Okay, so that pretty much does it for this video. I just wanted to review the types of cuts and talk about how we would use all those cuts to make a sawhorse leg or a similar type project. And then I'm going to hit you with a compound miter saw video for portable power tools. And we'll make these cuts, and I'll show you a couple other things about the compound miter saw. Thanks.